everyone, and welcome to another in probably a short series of readings of essays on abolition. Abolition of police, abolition of prisons, and so on and so forth, put on by Colin Kaepernick, Medium, and several others. Hope everyone is having a good day. I've had an exciting day already because the power went out earlier and was out for about an hour or more. And hopefully that was it for today, and it doesn't happen in the middle of the stream. As I look up, hoping I didn't just jinx myself. But until or unless that happens, guys, hello. Hope you're all having a good day. No Room for Squares, Dark Alile, Asian Hippie, The Rusted Monkey, Kiever Dam, Somnamnul Nation, Rose Cross, Big Grit, Check Your Logic, Corey Suzuki, Richo8181, Functional, Brittany Holland, Mike Savage, Blarg, Raziel, Jake Tungsith, Raul Aguilar, Red V7, Green Death, Colt Fox, Attack Alpaca, Decode. Hello, everyone. So apparently you only get a limited number of stories to read on this website per month. So this might be a very short series of only about maybe 3 or 4 videos, at least until next month. We'll see. Maybe I'll find a way to get some of the other stories as they're published. I believe they're putting out 1 per day up until the election. Something to that effect. But regardless, let's get into this. This one is called The Fight to Melt Ice, as in the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. So let us find out what we're doing here. Why we're fighting for a world without ICE. Under the cover of post-9/11 anti-terrorism, the Department of Homeland Security has unleashed a carceral assault on immigrant families and children. Carceral, that is the new buzzword if I was doing a bingo card. I'm sure it's really a word. I'm extending that trust, but I've never really seen it used before. Like incarceration, sure. Carceral, yeah. And in fact, you know what? Just because I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about, even if they don't. Carceral. What does carceral mean? Of, relating to, or suggesting a jail or prison. Okay. Unleashed a carceral, and then the lights flickered again. Dang it, oh man. If I suddenly disappear, guys, I apologize. I have no control over this today. But anyway, let's see. So, immigrant youth and our families courageously left everything behind in our countries of origin to move to the United States. Immigrant youth and our families courageously left everything behind in our countries of origin to move to the United States. Some of us fled poverty, military coups, violence, and wars, while others simply wanted to go after a better life. Well, I hate to tell you this, but economic migration is not necessarily a valid reason to cross the border. It's also a question as to the method by which the border was crossed. While adapting to a new place, we've experienced some of the worst this country has to offer. Workplace exploitation, wage theft, racial profiling, fear of deportation, and police violence. Well, now, that penultimate worry there on the list wouldn't be a worry if you hadn't broken the law. But as of the immigrant youth movement at United We Dream, we've also experienced the power of people coming together, taking action, and winning change. The seeds of our movement began with the idea that we have to protect and defend our families from deportation and fight for our right to access higher education. All right, now I am not an immigration lawyer. I am not a legal expert. Depending on the circumstances, your rights to education or opportunities thereof may be hindered if you are not in the country legally. So, just saying. All of this starts off with the predicate that you're not supposed to be here in the first place. You entered the country illegally. You are actively breaking the law. Put that aside, in the early 2000s, tens of thousands of undocumented students were graduating from high school each year. All of us lived with the fear of deportation and the looming possibility that our families could be torn apart while simultaneously facing barriers to college education, exploitation at work, and a future filled with uncertainty. Yes, because when you're here illegally, there is a Damocles sword hanging over your head that something may happen at some point where you have to answer for the crime you are perpetually committing. If we get into the DREAM Act and such things, I'll speak on that. But I generally blame the adults that were involved in bringing any children here or having children here who are still under the threat of deportation. They are the ones putting their families at risk. This fear of deportation was heightened after September 11, 2001, as we witnessed how immigration enforcement and national security were being conflated in new and troubling ways. In the name of fighting terrorism, President George W. Bush created the Department of Homeland Security in 2002, within which immigration and immigrants were considered matters of national security. Given the circumstances of what led to 9/11, yes. This not only led to increased racial profiling and xenophobia, but as a result, local and federal law enforcement were targeting Muslims, Black immigrants, and non-Muslim immigrants of color at higher rates, often leading to detention and/or deportation. That may be true. I honestly don't know what the statistics are. Are you going to provide us with any? No. Okay. Nationwide, thousands would be implicated by the post-9/11 enforcement regime, which produced an expanding infrastructure that supported local and federal law enforcement efforts to criminalize, target, detain, and deport immigrants. Within this infrastructure, we saw the increase in racial profiling, greater policing of Black and brown communities, enhanced militarization of the U.S.-Mexico border, and the implementation of racist federal policies such as the National Security Entry-Exit Registration System, which targeted immigrants from 25 countries. Were those 25 countries at all known to harbor security risks to the United States? Was it racist? Was Saudi Arabia on that list? How about Israel? Oh, oops, no, I didn't want to do that. I didn't mean to click that. My bad. Let's try that again. Among the thousands who were affected by the post-9/11 regime were Kamal Esheb and Walter Barrientos in New York and Marie Gonzalez in Missouri, 3 young undocumented immigrants who were threatened with deportation. If they were not here legally, deportation was always a threat that if they were adults at the time of their crossing the border, they were knowingly accepting. So, now, unless their parents brought them over here when they were young, but okay. Their deportation cases spurred some of our first advocacy efforts that would eventually carry us forward in later forming UWD in 2008. Together, along with activists and organizers from across the country, we mobilized people to write letters and telephone elected officials to demand that the government allow Kamal, Walter, and Marie to stay in the United States, winning extensive media attention. Although Marie's parents were deported, our organizing efforts stopped the deportations of Marie, Walter, and Kamal. I'm assuming because they were brought here as young people, unable to consent in a legal way to having been brought here. I'm assuming. You're not telling me, so I don't know. This was a bittersweet moment in our fight to protect immigrants, as it further exposed the human impact of the enforcement regime in not only deporting immigrants, but also tearing families apart. Stop conflating immigrants with 2 notions, legal and illegal. Simply come to this country does not somehow make you a bastion of morality. How did you come here? Was it legally or illegally? Do you respect the laws of the country in which you are arriving at, or don't you? If you're not going to follow the law, you're risking being prosecuted for it. And in coming here illegally, you're risking being deported. If you're not accepting that possibility, I don't know what to tell you, but you're out of luck. Tearing families apart, they chose to come here illegally. They chose to either bring children here or have children here after they arrived, and thus they put their families at risk every single day by being here illegally. Whose fault is it, might I ask? And as far as like tearing families apart, if an adult or a member of a family commits a crime and is caught committing that crime and is arrested and detained or incarcerated or deported what were we just supposed to stop doing that for everybody? You know, like Uncle Joe commits a murder and we're going to tear the family apart by putting Joe in jail. Oh no, we can't do that. Joe has kids. Are you kidding me? This moment also taught us that people closest to the pain are closest to the solutions our communities need. Okay, what are the solutions? What is the replacement for ICE? At the time, undocumented immigrants publicly fighting against deportations were unheard of. Yeah, because it seems kind of like a waste of time, doesn't it? Yet, in defiance of conventional wisdom, and apparently the law, undocumented youth and their families launched campaigns to share their stories, pressure those with decision-making power, and win deportation relief. It was clear that our movement had the power to create real change. This was even more evident in 2012 when the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program, was created as a direct result of our organizing efforts. Okay, and just for the record, I don't have a problem with DACA. I don't fundamentally have a problem with the DREAM Act. If children are brought here as minors by adult parents against their knowledge or will or any reason to legally consent one way or the other, they're victims. I mean, they might not sound polite to say so, but they're victims. They're being unknowingly and unwittingly put into a situation where they're going to be under hardship they wouldn't otherwise have to be if their parents had followed the rules. So as far as having a pathway for children brought here illegally to become legal citizens, residents, etc., I don't have a problem with that. And the conditions that are in DACA and the DREAM Act, overall, as far as I can recall, last time I looked at them, are reasonable to me. So just for a baseline of that. Under the Obama administration, enforcement programs and collaboration between ICE and local police were aggressively expanded, leading to an increase in the number of immigrants being detained and deported, even for minor violations, such as traffic infractions. No, they were being deported because they were here illegally. They may have been discovered as a result of traffic infractions. If you're pulled over for violating traffic laws and you cannot produce valid ID, and that, uncovers the fact that you're not here legally, yeah, you'll be deported for not being here illegally. Sorry. Not for crossing the center line. What are you talking about? Sorry, my brain took a skip there because I'm just like, I've heard that over and over again. They're being deported for traffic violations. No. They were caught violating traffic laws and then discovered to be here illegally. Under the political calculation that ramping up enforcement would bring members of Congress from both parties to the negotiating table, the Obama administration deported a record number of immigrants from the United States. Well, credit where credit is due. It is not often quoted about what Obama was doing with the immigration, as though he was some kind of saint and Trump was some kind of comparative demon. During Obama's 8 years in office, more than 3 million individuals and families were deported and separated from their loved ones. His administration failed to pass legislative immigration reforms, while the enforcement regime steadily grew in resources and power. Well, first off, his administration didn't extend entirely to the House or Congress. They would have had to put something on his table. They never did. And of course, Obama kind of went around Congress with that whole DACA thing. He kind of left that part out where it was all an executive order and not really something that Congress approved of or put on his desk. And in recent years, Trump gave Congress the opportunity to actually put the DREAM Act on his desk, and they haven't. So, yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but who cares, right, about the facts behind it? Let's see. As organizers and directly affected people, we recognize this as a moment of leverage. By sharing our stories, we could pressure President Obama to take action. He did. Okay, our movement successfully created the conditions that led President Obama to implement DACA. I don't know if I want to credit you with that, since he used the executive order in a way that I don't think that presidents should use it. I'm not a fan of presidential fiats, regardless of who the president is. Executive orders are very, very iffy territory for me as a citizen. Which protected close to 800,000 young immigrants from deportation. The program continues to be the most significant policy breakthrough and victory on immigration in almost 3 decades. Depending on how you look at it, sure. But unfortunately, there was only one person that put that thing through, and it was Obama. It was not put through by the voice of the people as represented by their, well, representatives. So it was a great breakthrough, but not one that the people of the country agreed to by extension. So until the DREAM Act is passed or something similar, it's on shaky ground as far as I'm concerned. By sharing our stories and leading direct... let me try that again. By sharing our stories and leading direct action and civil disobedience to get ICE agents out of our communities, we recognize the power we had in winning protection from deportation through policy changes. Illegal immigrants do not have protection from deportation. Nothing you did protected them from deportation. Deportations still happen all the time. Deferrals, other things can happen, certainly, but the deportation can still happen at any particular point if you're here illegally and your case isn't under appeal or something. This and other victories have strengthened our movement and brought hope to our communities, but as we have seen, mass detention and deportation have not stopped. That's because mass illegal immigration has not stopped. People being discovered in the country illegally has not stopped. ICE and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, the two agencies primarily responsible for immigration enforcement, have continued to carry out a racist and white supremacist agenda targeting immigrants, particularly black and brown immigrants, for detention and deportation with little oversight or accountability. Clearly, our fight is not over. Right, so ICE and CBP are racist and white supremacist. Were they racist and white supremacist under Obama? Did Obama not, quote unquote, target black and brown immigrants, unquote? Also, are we not going to distinguish between legal and illegal immigrants? Of course we're not. Just, we're going to make it a race thing, not a legality thing. All right. Year after year, failure at the immigration policy negotiation table has been followed by near silent acceptance of growing annual budgets and authority for ICE and CBP. Well, they continue to have a job to do. Together, the two agencies employ more than 80,000 people with a massive budget of $25.3 billion in 2020, $8.4 billion for ICE and $16.9 billion for CBP, which is more than all other federal law enforcement agencies combined. Yeah, you know why that is? Do you know the length of our borders, north and south? You know what kind of resources it takes to try to defend our borders, north and south? Any idea at all? Okay. Yet, while resources for the deportation force have grown, the deportation force, you keep categorizing them as that's their only focus. Yeah, not trying to deal with human trafficking or drug smuggling or any other kind of smuggling. Nothing like that. No, it's just deportation. Just about putting people out of the country, not protecting people from things coming into the country or trying to stop things going in and out of the country illegally that might harm people, weapons, etc. No. It's just about deportation. It's all about kicking people out, not defending the borders. Okay. Yet, while resources for the deportation force have grown, schools and hospitals in our communities often remain underfunded and suffer from a lack of federal support. That's a budgeting thing that's got... okay. Our communities. What do you mean, our communities? Because I know lots of schools in places that are in the middle of the country and very white that don't have a lot of federal support either. So not quite sure what you mean. The deportation force of ICE and CBP, built by administrations on both sides of the aisle, has been completely unleashed under the Trump administration. Yeah, unlike Obama, who gave, for all the people that he deported, there were a lot of people he just give a pass to. They just have to show up and check in occasionally, maybe wear an ankle bracelet in the most serious cases, but otherwise they could be here illegally and live here for years and years and years without threat of deportation, so long as they checked in regularly. I did several stories on that in some of the videos I've done in my Expatriate Games playlist you can find on my channel. But yeah, Trump decided for the most part not to keep doing that. And so people who had been here, living here illegally for a decade or more, suddenly found out, oh yeah, well, time's up. ICE and CBP have carried out a list of attacks against immigrant communities, including putting children in cages. Are you going to credit both administrations with that by any chance? Targeting immigrants in their workplaces where they're working illegally, employed by people who are breaking the law by employing them there. Schools, places of worship, hospitals, and homes, and breaking down doors and abducting parents from their children. But the Trump administration hasn't stopped there. Throughout his 4 years in office, Trump consistently tried to dismantle DACA, reduce refugee programs, and detain and deport an increasing number of immigrants. Again, DACA is there only by presidential executive order. Consequently, it can be undone by presidential executive order. Trump has been stopped from doing so by the courts, which is still very shaky ground, in my opinion. Since it was created under presidential fiat, it stands only on the basis of a presidential fiat. But anyway, and he also came out and said, I'm going to make DACA go away in 6 months. You guys have 6 months to get the DREAM Act or something like it on my desk. And they didn't do anything. Like, why have something sit there as tenuously as an executive order that any president could challenge or dismantle on a whim rather than passing legislation? I haven't understood it since it started. I don't understand it now. Under his administration, we have seen 57 immigrants, including children, die in detention camps. The deportation of a woman who served as a key witness into reports of sexual assault and harassment inside ICE facilities, reports of forced hysterectomies being performed on immigrant women, and 8 immigrants who have died as a result of COVID-19 while in ICE custody. I'm sure all of those things are exactly factually as you've said. There's no extenuating circumstances whatsoever. And yeah, people are just being murdered at ICE facilities and detention centers and things. I'm sure that's the case. Yeah. Facing these and a number of other attacks, UWD has fought tirelessly to protect and demand justice for immigrant communities. Over the past decade, UWD alone fought on behalf of more than 1,000 people threatened by deportation. 1,000 people that were here illegally by any chance. Facing hundreds of calls per week on our community MigraWatch free hotline, UWD community organizers respond to immigrant families reporting interactions with ICE and CBP agents and needing help with their friends and loved ones when their friends and loved ones faced detention and deportation because they were here illegally. In one instance, Tanya, a cancer survivor in Georgia, which is irrelevant, was taken to a detention camp after a traffic stop. So she was stopped for violating a traffic law, found not to be driving without a license, I'm assuming, and then discovered to be here illegally. Okay. ICE agents kept Tanya locked away for 4 months, away from her children and the cancer treatment she needed to live. Really? She had a diagnosed medical condition and ICE prevented her from getting medical attention. Really? Okay, you got a link to that? No? No references? No? Okay. UWD has fought on behalf of individuals like Hector, who was taken away after being stopped for expired tags on his license plate. And high school students like Dennis, who was dragged away by ICE agents after reporting being bullied at school. I'm sure that those are exactly the details that went into these situations, and there's nothing else that you would otherwise tell us. I totally believe you. Our history and the present moment have shown us that the risk of harm, detention, and deportation will always exist wherever police and federal law enforcement do. If you're breaking the law, then yes. Our vision is for all people in this country, regardless of immigration status, to be able to live freely with full dignity and thrive. Okay, so the people that follow the rules, follow the law, respect the laws of the country, should be placed on the same level as people who are coming here illegally, breaking the law, disrespecting the law, possibly putting people at risk, possibly smuggling children in. Everybody's on the even playing field. Get rid of borders, right? Just get rid of the borders. Why do we have the borders? Why bother? Why bother at all? 9/11, oh, it was an anomaly. You know, people coming here, with a plan and a threat without any kind of checking to see if they're going to, yeah, never mind. It's never going to happen again. It's nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about at all, ever. No. To get there, we must unite in the larger struggle against white supremacy and racism, which are rooted in interlocking systems of policing, mass incarceration, and immigration enforcement that, by design, target and further dehumanize immigrants, especially people of color. At the same time, we must also acknowledge the historic erasure of Black and Indigenous people from immigration conversations and center these communities in our fight for immigrant justice. How did you get DACA passed? Well, not passed, but how did you get DACA implemented? You just said you had a great victory by telling your stories, etc. Do you have power or don't you? Were you able to make change or weren't you? Is there a fight over immigrant situations in this country or isn't there? What are you talking about? The United States legacy of genocide and colonialism cannot be ignored. Oh, what genocide have we committed in the last 100 years? Do tell. I'm curious to know. As the impact of this continues to be felt today, we have seen Indigenous immigrants die as a result of the U.S. immigration system's failure to provide interpretation and translation services to immigrants who speak Indigenous languages. I'll believe that may be the case. What are you talking about? Indigenous immigrants. How can you be an Indigenous immigrant? What? Thank you, Bicall, the Driving Ape Man, for the on-set chair. Appreciate it. Indigenous immigrants. In 2018, 2 children from indigenous Maya communities in Guatemala. What? Well, maybe they were indigenous to Guatemala, but what? Okay, in 2018, 2 children from indigenous Maya communities in Guatemala died in CBP custody after not receiving proper medical attention as medical services were not translated in, and I'm going to struggle to pronounce that word, but I'm just going to say 2 indigenous languages that the children and their families spoke. I am sure that those are the only circumstances that led to such a thing. People came here illegally, and then they spoke dialects that were not easily spoken here or known here, and because of that, they died. That's the A, B, C, and D of it. I'm sure it's as simple as that. But here's the thing. If they had gone through proper channels, perhaps they would have had the opportunity to speak to someone who could speak their language. Did they come here legally, or did they come here illegally? This is why, over the past decade, UWD leaders have made the demand of abolition and justice for all central to our vision, work, and movement strategy. Okay, so rather than have anybody at the border to accept someone who's coming across, you just want ICE to be gone, CBP to be gone, borders to be open, everybody just comes in whenever they want to, whether they're sick or poor, whether they're, criminals smuggling something, whether the children they have with them are actually their children and not somebody else's, or not children they're supposed to have in their custody. You're supposedly getting into the point here where you're going to tell us how you're going to resolve the absence of border security in America, right? Grounded in our lived experience, we know that ICE and local police work together to racially profile immigrants. Well, it really depends on the community. There's plenty of cities out there that don't work with ICE because local police forces are not technically required to assist ICE, so they don't, especially in sanctuary cities. But then sometimes ICE can say, hey, there are people in your town who are criminals who are bringing in drugs or weapons or people. Do you want those people here? Because we need help to take them out. For many in our communities, a traffic stop or any other contact with local police is the first entry point into the deportation pipeline. No, the first entry point into the deportation pipeline is coming into the country illegally. Getting caught in a traffic stop, well, you just found yourself on the fast track, that's all. Thus, when we call for the abolition of ICE, we are also calling for the abolition of enforcement on all levels and the systems that support it, from detention facilities to prisons. What do you do with the drug smuggler? What do you do with the child trafficker? Tell me, oh, tell me true. The abolition of ICE is inherently tied to the abolition of all other forms of enforcement and incarceration. Hence, UWD stands unequivocally with the movement for Black lives and its demands to defund the police, because we know that the police, ICE, and CBP work together to disproportionately target Black and brown immigrants or illegal immigrants. We also know that the same people who profit from the mass incarceration of US-born Black and brown people also profit from immigration detention and deportation. Okay. We are engaged in a lifelong journey towards racial, gender, and economic justice. Well, where does justice come from if there are no prisons for the victims of crime? Where does justice come from if there are no police or law enforcement for the victims of crime? Where does the justice come from to victims of, say, people like, Dylan Roof, if there are no police and no prisons? What do you do with a Dylan Roof, might I ask? With each victory, our sense of what is possible should grow, and our understanding of the vulnerabilities of our adversaries should deepen. A world where our communities do not have to live with the fear of deportation and detention is possible. A world in which we and others in the movement have abolished ICE, and where the safety, health, education, and well-being of our communities is a priority. If there are no prisons and there are no police, there's no one there to arrest criminals or detain or incarcerate criminals. How is the well-being of your community a priority? If there is no rule of law and law enforcement and consequences to illegal actions in existence, how is the well-being of your community a priority? What do people who have come here legally think about illegal immigrants? Have you asked them? You talk about immigrants in one word, not distinguishing between legal and illegal. So I'd be curious to know, have you talked to immigrants who followed the law and asked them their opinion on illegal immigrants? I mean, if you're going to group them all together, then you must have some idea of where they stand on these issues all around, correct? We have witnessed and participated in a movement of undocumented people who have transformed the politics and policy of immigration with a bold vision of freedom and dignity for all people, regardless of immigration status. How dignified is it for someone who's followed the law and gone through all the hoops and passed all the tests and did everything they were supposed to do in respect for this country and its laws? How dignified do you think it is for them to look upon someone who didn't do any of that, crossed the border illegally, cheated, broke the law, disrespected the country? How much dignity do you think there is in that, if you want to see both of these people treated equally? I don't know. That movement has proven that when we follow the leadership and vision of those closest to the pain and injustice, a new world is possible. Pain and injustice, the injustice of being caught breaking the law. Yeah, okay. Injustice. Injustice. All right, and just like with the last article, and I'll point this out with every one of these that I read, as the power continues to flicker and freak me out, at no point is an alternative presented. You remove the Border Security Force, right, BPD. You remove ICE. You remove prisons. You remove police in general. Defund, abolish, etc. And what is left? If the border is not secured in some way, shape, or form, are you taking responsibility for all that will happen when that occurs? Are you taking responsibility for the human trafficking? Are you taking responsibility for the weapons trafficking? Are you taking responsibility for the drug trafficking? Are you taking responsibility for any crimes that may be committed by people who are criminals in their country of origin that come here unchecked and commit crimes in this country? Are you taking responsibility for that at all? What is the point of the idea of sovereignty if we do not have borders that we enforce? Do tell. What are you replacing it with? Are you going to tell us? No, of course not, because you don't have an answer to that. It is a tantrum with no end. That's it. Thank you, Pincalo. Are you forgetting guns? Are you taking you are forgetting guns? I'm trying to interpret that. I'm not doing a good job at it. But thank you, Pincalo. Give me a follow-up message with an interpretation there so I know what I'm responding to. Let's see. Cynthia Garcia is an out, queer, undocumented Wimixon living in Oklahoma City. She serves as the National Campaigns Manager for Community Protection at United We Dream, where she runs a nationwide hotline of support for immigrants whose family members have been abducted by ICE agents and teaches them how to organize and fight back. Cynthia herself is protected from deportation because of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Well, golly. So your parents brought you here illegally, and you've benefited from the laws of this country, and now you want to fight for people to be able to break the laws of this country. Okay, and abducted from their family. Yeah, right. Okay. Let's see. Pincalo, the proper wording, if my voice-to-speech will stop being horrible, is I was saying you are also forgetting that they want to take the guns away from people. Well, gun laws are a subject that I couldn't possibly try to tackle here, but sure. Yeah, they want to take the guns away from people. Yeah, the police are terrible. The federal government's terrible no matter which side of the argument you're on. We don't need police. We don't need prisons. We don't need ICE. We don't need border protection. Never mind all that. What are we going to do instead? I don't know. It's just bad. Everything's bad. Then what's your alternative? I don't know. I just want it gone. ICE is bad. I want it gone. It's abducting people. It's enforcing the laws of this country, and the laws of this country are detestable to me for some reason. I've told this story many times before. I've had more than a couple of coworkers who have gone through all the hoops to become legal residents and citizens of this country. I have watched from the sidelines, so I don't have any direct experience, but just seeing the kind of Byzantine, labyrinthine kind of things that they had to do to come to this country, to work legally, to get all the paperwork processed once, twice, 3 times, and so on. Just the ridiculousness of it. Like one of my coworkers, I mean, he literally got to the airport to get on the plane to come here and begin living here for the first time when there was a mix-up in his visa paperwork that was not his fault. And so everything got delayed by like 3 months or something again. It was nuts. But he did everything he was asked to do. As frustrating as it was, as tedious as it was, and so on. You know, even the stuff that you'd say is completely reasonable, add on 3 extra layers of that and routines on it. And he did it all. And he got here, he worked here, he lives here now, he's got a family, he's a citizen. It's great. And I've got such admiration for him for going through all that and, you know, being the kind of person that I want as a neighbor, someone who follows the laws and respects the people around them, etc. Right? Heaven forfend. And so when I see people saying they deserve something for cheating, that the law should not apply to them because they have children. Can you imagine somebody going into a grocery store, shooting up people, stealing money, getting caught, and then saying, you can't arrest me, I have children. Give me a break. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And it's even made more nonsensical by the fact that they don't even offer up an alternative. I mean, both of these articles I've read so far, nothing offered in the way of an alternative. Like, instead of police, then what? Instead of prisons, then what? Oh, community outreach or community groups or something? Like, how? How's that going to work? I mean, I can imagine what the answers are going to be from my previous restorative justice investigations, but I want to hear at least a pitch, at least an idea. I mean, good, bad, or otherwise, I want to hear that you actually have thought about what happens after if you actually succeeded in this. But so far, nope. Maybe in future essays they will do so. I can only hope. But with that, guys, I'm going to end this here. Again, apparently you only get a couple of essays per month out of this website. So I'll do a couple more of these as things proceed, as I'm able to. I won't do all 30 essays probably, but here and there on days where maybe I'm hosting the Lords of the Night or otherwise. But we will learn together, I suppose, learn what the arguments are, or at least the complaints, maybe someday an alternative. Otherwise, everyone, I hope you're all well. Hope you all have a good rest of your day. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents or the Ranting Monkey, you can find all three of us tonight on Satsu 2 Cents' channel. It's a special Tuesday because I had to take over last night because Satsu's internet crapped out. But tonight, Tuesday, on Satsu 2 Cents' channel, you can find all three of us for the Lords of the Night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, with special guest Gamer Valine, who you may know from your chat world. In chat world. Anyway, guys, again, thank you for showing up. Thank you so much for your participation, your generosity. Hope you're all well. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.